My name is Krista. I'm a customer success manager here at Akindi. Essentially, I work with both administrators at universities as well as instructors to ensure that everyone has a positive experience and a smooth experience when using Akindi. Akindi is a multiple choice assessment tool that allows instructors to quickly create and grade multiple choice assessments. We allow instructors to create assessments both for paper as well as online, but paper is sort of like the Scantron alternative in which students are writing the test on physical bubble sheets is sort of the bread and butter of what we offer and is what we're going to be focusing on for today's webinar. You'll notice that in Zoom, there is both a chat as well as a Q&A feature. You are welcome to drop questions in that as we go. I'll be stopping at a few key points to answer any questions and make sure that everyone is feeling good about Akindi. And we'll get started. Like I mentioned, feel free to drop questions in there. Amazing. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and I'm actually going to start from within Canvas. So Akindi is integrated into, oh wait, just adjust this, there we go. Fantastic. So Akindi is integrated into many different learning management systems. We're integrated into Canvas, D2L, Blackboard, and Moodle. I was looking at the registration list ahead of time, and I know that there was a number of people that are also from Baruch here, which Akindi is not yet integrated into Baruch, but so I'll cover that as well. But for most people, we will be integrated directly into your learning management system. So what you will do is you will log in to your LMS, whether that's Canvas, D2L, or Blackboard, or Moodle. You will select a course, and you will click Launch Akindi. In Canvas, this is going to be on the left-hand menu. You may have to enable it by going to Settings, going to Navigation, and then Akindi would be listed as a disabled item. Once it's enabled, it would be listed here on the left-hand panel. At the end, I will also be going through how to access Akindi through D2L and Blackboard, but both of those you will be going, Akindi will be created as a content module, but I'll be sure to dive into that at the end as well so you can see what that looks like. Regardless of what learning management system you use, once you click Launch Akindi, it will be the exact same regardless of how you use Akindi. So once you click Launch Akindi or Launch Assessments, then Akindi will open in a separate browser tab, and there will be a number of things that happen. One is that we will automatically create your course for you. So I have my Intro to Accounting course that I launched that's now listed on my courses in Akindi. And Akindi has automatically created or like synced my class roster. The student IDs, names, emails, and sections have already been imported from my learning management system. Every single time you launch Akindi from your learning management system, this roster will stay up to date. So you, as students are added to the course in the first few weeks, or if they drop the course through the semester, then this roster will also stay updated. Like I mentioned, I know that there's a number of people here that are from Baruch, in which Akindi is not yet integrated into the learning management system. So you'll have to do this setup process. You'll have to like set up your course in Akindi by clicking this add course, and then you would upload a roster manually through this upload roster. And again, I will dive in more depth to this at the end as well, if you'd like. So like I mentioned, once you are set up in Akindi, regardless of what learning management system you use, or regardless of whether you're uploading the roster directly to Akindi, then you will create an assessment in Akindi. This is now the same for everyone. So every single time you want to run a multiple choice assessment in Akindi, you will click this create assessment process, and Akindi will walk you through a simple two-step process to set up your assessment. So the first step is customizing the bubble sheets that you'll be giving the students. So you'll notice that I have a preview of my bubble sheet on the right-hand side, and on the left, I have a form that I can customize that bubble sheet. I already have my Intro to Accounting course selected, so then I will add my assessment name, and this can be whatever will help you identify it. So I know that a number of people are planning to use webinar or planning to use Akindi for midterms, final exams, quizzes. You are welcome to name this whatever you'd like to help you identify that. I mentioned that Akindi also offers online testing in which the students will be completing the assessment online, but today we're going to be covering that paper assessment type in which the students are writing the test on a physical bubble sheet. Based on the number of questions that you have on your assessment, you will select the layout that best fits your needs. So some of our standard question layouts are 50, 100, 150. We also have larger questions like 200 question layouts. Or we also have A through J layouts. So if you have a number of distractors, then you have access to that as well. Your layouts that you see in your Akindi account might be a little bit different depending on your school. And that being said, if there's anything that you are looking for in particular that you don't have access to, for example, if you are running 200 questions and don't have a 200 question layout, you are welcome to reach out to the Akindi team and we are happy to provide you with that template. Akindi will automatically ignore any unused questions on the assessment. So if you only have 40 questions, for example, you can still use this 50 question layout and Akindi will automatically ignore the last 10 questions and will make the assessment out of 40. I know that a number of people said that they are running multiple versions of their assessment. So in that case, you'll turn on this multi-version toggle and select your desired number of versions. Currently, Akindi supports up to 6 different versions of the assessment. This will allow you to enter more than one answer key into the assessment, and I'll show you how to do that. But essentially, that will allow you for students that are like sitting next to each other to be writing the same test in different order or completely different test questions. Checking pre-fill student information will take the names and student IDs that we pulled from your learning management system or that you uploaded to Akindi and pre-populate the bubble sheets with the student names and student IDs. So this way you'll have a test sheet for each student in your roster with their name already bubbled on it. Obviously, if you have large classes, I know that there's a number of people that have like over 100 students in their class. It could be difficult to hand out a specific test sheet. In which case, you can just leave that turned off. Akindi would provide you with a blank test sheet. The students would write in their own names and bubble in their own student IDs. And then finally, we have the ability to control what's displayed in the title or the header of the test sheet. So I can use these checkboxes. So I can say, I just want assessment name and student name, for example, and Akindi will show you what that preview looks like. Before I click save and continue, I'm just going to see if there are any questions. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions around customizing the bubble sheet that you'll be giving the students. Yes, I will make sure that I send this recording out at the end so that you have the ability to review it. Mhm. What if you have more than 150 questions? Great, yeah, so our largest template at the moment is a 200 question layout. So if that isn't already available to you in this drop-down menu, then you're welcome to reach out to the Akindi team through this little smiley face icon in the bottom right-hand corner and just ask for that 200 question template and we'll enable it on your accounts that's listed there. Great. So I'll now click save and continue. And Akindi will then prompt me to enter my answer key. So there's a number of ways to enter your answer key into Akindi. The most commonly used method, especially when you're first starting out with Akindi, is just to select the correct response using this digital interface. So with Scantron machines, you had to like bubble in the specific actual physical template. With Akindi, you'll just do that digitally. So I'll use this digital bubble sheet essentially to select the correct response for each question. You'll see that Akindi will provide a preview of that answer key on the right-hand side. Because I'm choosing to run multiple versions of my assessment, I have a drop-down menu at the top that allows me to toggle between the different versions. So I will enter the answer key for version A, use the drop-down menu to switch to version B, and then I can enter the answer key for version B. One of the benefits of doing the answer key digitally, or it can be storing the answer key digitally, is that you have the ability to edit this answer key at any point. So even after the test sheets have been uploaded and graded by Akindi, you can come back, edit the answer key, and Akindi will automatically regrade all of the test sheets. Akindi offers a number of different advanced marking options. When I turn on this display advanced marking options toggle at the top, Akindi will provide me with many more options to customize how that test question is going to be graded in Akindi. So once that's turned on, I have the ability to quickly change the weight of the question or the number of points. So I can set a question to be worth multiple marks, or I could set it to be worth partial marks, or even 0 marks. You could set a question to be worth 0 marks if you want to remove a question from the test. So like after the fact, you're reviewing and want to remove the question. Or you could have survey questions as well by making it worth 0 points, 0 marks. The default grading scheme in Akindi is the exact mark grading scheme. And what that means is that the students will have to select the exact responses listed on the key in order to receive a mark. So in this case, with A, B selected and exact mark as the grading scheme, the students would have to select both A and B in order to receive a point for this question. If they just selected A, then they would get 0. We can customize that using this drop-down menu. So I could select partial mark, for example, in which the students would then receive half a mark for A, half a mark for B, and a full point for selecting both. And Akindi will automatically divide this amongst however many correct responses you have. So 0.33 if there's 3 correct, 0.25, etc. And then finally, we have our either or grading scheme that will award full points for selecting any of the correct responses. So this is commonly used after the fact when you're reviewing your assessment and you're like, oh, the correct answer is B, but I understand that question was kind of ambiguous and I understand why everyone selected A, and I want to award full points for selecting either B or A. Then you can use this either or grading scheme. And then finally, you can create a bonus question in which the students will be rewarded for answering that question correctly, in which they'll be given a point, but that question will not be counted towards the total weight of the assessment. Amazing. Again, I'm going to just pause here and answer any questions you have around entering your answer key. Okay, so should I name the versions differently so they know which version they're writing? Yeah, so by default, Akindi will name the versions like version A, version B, version C, etc. So I'd recommend naming it like that as well, just that the students know. And I'll highlight this a little bit later on when we're actually looking at a bubble sheet, but essentially the students will self-indicate which version they're writing. So if on the test questions, it says you're writing version A, they'll know to bubble in version A. Is there a way to upload the answer key for the entire exam? Yes. So there's a few other ways to enter your answer key into Akindi, and they can be found under this More Options drop-down menu. So one of those is to copy and paste the answer key. So if you have a list of the correct responses, meaning 1A, 2B, 3C, you could copy that list and paste it into Akindi, and we would digest it and display your answer key that way. Or if you have a test question document in which the correct answer is either bolded, italicized, or in a different colored font, then you could actually upload your test questions to Akindi using this upload answer key option. We would then digest that answer key, like the indicated answer key on those test questions, and use that answer key. I like to use all that apply questions, which you just showed us how to grade partial mark. Do students get marks for not choosing the wrong answer? So how our partial mark question works is that the students will receive a partial mark for selecting the correct response. They will not receive a mark for not selecting an incorrect response. That's a weird double negative, but I hope that made sense. So for example, the students would receive, if the student selected A and C in this case, then they would just receive 0.5 for answering A. if they selected A, B, and C, then they would receive 0. So how how Akindi grades it is that as soon as the student selects more responses than the answer key contains, then they will be awarded 0. We just don't want students to be able to game the system and be able to select all of the responses and get that question right. You do have the option to select this deduct for incorrect answers, in which the student would be deducted for answering the question incorrectly. So if they selected A, C, then they would receive plus 0.5 for A, minus 0.5 for C, so then they'd get 0 for that question. I get that is a little confusing. I feel like that was a little bit complicated to explain. I'm happy let me just make note. I'll include, we have a number of Help Center articles. We have one really in-depth Help Center article around how it can be grades partial mark questions. So I'll be sure to include that when I send out the recording as well. So hopefully if my answer didn't make a lot of sense, then that article will help clarify things. And please let me know if you have any follow-up questions for my answer. Amazing. Okay, great. Yeah, if you have a follow-up, feel free to type it up. Also, if you'd like, I can just allow you, I can give you speaking rights if you like, and then it might just be easier that way. Okay, I've given you the ability to unmute yourself if you want to be able to just ask your question out loud. If you want to type it, that's fine as well.
I was the one who asked the question about all that apply. Thank you for that answer. So to avoid students answering, if there's 3 correct answers and they mark 4, they get a 0.
That's correct.
Yeah, even if they got a couple of the 3 correct. And so that would be very disheartening for a student, and that would lead to a lot of fights. So if we were to tell them in the exam the 2 best answers, right, then they would be able to get credit, at least half credit, for the one that they got right, without hosing themselves by checking an additional wrong answer. You see where I'm going? That seems like the most straightforward way to avoid a fight.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Fantastic. Oh, I see someone put their hand up. Let me just find. Perfect. Let me just get sorted here. Where is the? I got a notification that someone put their hand up, and now I don't see it. Okay, if you had your hand up, let me know. Okay, great. So now that we've entered our answer key, which I mentioned, you can edit this at any point. Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying. You can edit your answer key at any point, even after the test questions have been, or even after the test sheets have been uploaded and graded by Akindi, and I'll show you how to do that after. So I'm going to now click continue, and my assessment is now fully set up in Akindi. And I have the ability to then print my bubble sheets. So I'm going to click print bubble sheets. Akindi will then generate a PDF that's customized how I set up in that first initial step. So because I chose to pre-fill my student information, I now have a test sheet for each student in my roster with the names and student IDs pre-populated onto that bubble sheet. Like I mentioned, that is completely optional. If you want, you can just print a blank test sheet. Akindi will give you some blanks just in case. You would print a blank test sheet. The students would write in their own names and bubble in their own IDs. Regardless of whether the test sheets are pre-populated with the student names, the version bubbles on the test sheets will be blank. This is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. The students will self-indicate which version they're writing, and Akindi will read that version bubble and then automatically grade it against the correct answer key. These test sheets can be printed using any regular printer and paper. The default settings of your printer will work fine. We just ask that once the test sheets are printed, that you double check that these 4 little corner squares are present and they're not cut off or damaged in any way. Akindi uses those corner squares to essentially map the location of all the bubbles. So it's really important that when they're printed, that those corner squares are on the test sheet. We do have some ways in our backend to fix corner squares that are damaged. So if that ever does happen, please let us know. So as I mentioned, you'll print these using any regular printer and paper, and you'll hand these out to the students. The students will complete them, but the same way that they would with a Scantron sheet. The only main difference is that Akindi just looks at the darkness of the bubble. So students can use any writing utensil to complete the assessment. They could use a pencil of any kind. They could use a pen of any color, blue, black, red, purple. The only thing that Akindi is unable to read is highlighters. So typically like highlighters just don't make enough of a contrast that can be picked up by a scanner. You'll notice that there's a number of, there's quite a bit of white space, especially in some of our smaller templates. So you are welcome to use that however you like a student's right there, that won't affect any of Akindi's grading. Even if they write on the bubbles that are not being used, that won't affect anything. Akindi is fairly resilient in being able to grade the questions and grade the bubble sheets. Nadia, I see that you have your hand up. Let me just give you speaking permission. There we go.
Hi, thanks a lot, Krista.
Hi.
If they use a pen and then they kind of cross it off to do another one, will it detect that it's been crossed off, or will they not get the marks if they were to use a pen?
So Akindi will actually display that to you, the instructor, and ask you for verification on how to do that. So if there's like two bubbles that are bubbled and one of them is X'd out, we'll show you a little snippet and say like, how would you like us to grade this? And I have a few baked into the test sheets that I'll upload in a moment, so you'll see what I mean.
Thanks.
No problem, thank you. Fantastic, I see some Q&A. Okay, so for two versions, we print exams in white versus colored paper to enable fast handing out every other sheet in class. Okay, and indicate Form A for Form B. Okay, the student must identify by bubbling. Yes, it seems that the Akindi program keys to know that the bubble which key to apply. So there's no point in using white versus colored paper for bubble sheets when we hand it out. Is that correct? Yeah, so yes and no, and I guess it's ultimately how you would like to run it. So in terms of like the colored paper, we do typically recommend printing the test sheets on white paper. And that being said, we have lots of instructors that use colored paper. We would just recommend running like a test sheet ahead of time to verify that the specific color that you're using will work with Akindi's grading, essentially. But yeah, essentially, Akindi will only look at these bubbles to determine which version that student wrote, and will automatically grade it. So there's no need to use different colored paper. We'll be able to handle that using that version. And one thing to note as well is that Akindi will even digitally sort test sheets. So it's not like you have to collect all the version A's and all the version B's. You can just they can be all jumbled together, and we'll do all that sorting for you. So long story short, you don't have to use two different colored papers. If you want to, just for your own peace of mind, you're welcome to that as well. Great. So now I'm gonna go back to my course, and I now have a dashboard set up for the assessment that I've just created, my midterm 1. So from this dashboard, I can manage my entire assessment. So I can edit the assessment. That takes me back to that first step of customizing the bubble sheets. I can edit the answer key at any point, like we mentioned. I have the ability to print more bubble sheets. This is where I'll go to upload completed test sheets, which is the next step for us. And then finally, when the results are ready to be viewed, they'll be viewed here. And I only have one assessment created, but if I had more, I would have one of these little dashboards for each assessment that I've created in Akindi. So let's get these test sheets graded. So after the assessment has been completed, the students are done, you will collect all of the completed test sheets and scan them using any regular scanner. Again, the default settings of your scanner will work fine. How most scanners are set up is that you will place the full stack of test sheets onto the document feeder of the scanner. The scanner will walk you through a few simple steps, one of which will and then you will likely be emailed a PDF of those test sheets. So in terms of scanning, we recommend scanning them in batches of up to 100 test sheets. So if you have a class of 200, splitting that in roughly 2 batches and scanning them in 2 separate batches and then uploading that to Akindi. If you have under 100 students or like just over 100 students, feel free to scan them all together and we'll be able to grade them. So once you have a PDF of all of the completed test sheets, you will upload that PDF to Akindi, clicking this Upload Response Sheets button, selecting the file that contains your bubble sheets, and uploading that to Akindi. And I will click Upload. So if you, we already talked about this as well, but Akindi will digitally sort test sheets for you. So you don't have to sort them by name. You don't have to sort them by ID. You don't even have to sort them by version. Akindi will do all of that digitally sorting for you. We'll also even rotate test sheets if they're scanned in upside down. So as long as the bubbles are being read by the scanner, we will do the rest of the work. This is a real-time look at Akindi scanning those test sheets. As you can see, it's about 1 to 2 seconds per test sheet. It's a fairly quick process. So if you have 200 students, it should be a few minutes or less, and Akindi will present you with the results right away. So during this time, it's looking for those corner squares, mapping the location of all the bubbles, and then it's looking at the darkness or the contrast of the bubbles to determine whether they are filled, whether they're blank, or whether they're like partially filled. And we have safety nets in place so that if there's anything that Akindi isn't sure how to grade, it's going to present that to you, to the instructor, for human verification. So one of those incidences that we were talking about is if a student bubbles into responses but X's out one of them, we'll present that to you. If there's like 2 bubbles and one looks a little bit more erased, but it's not like erased enough for us to determine that it's fully erased, again, we're going to present that to you. We'll also highlight things like students misfilling their student ID or leaving their version bubble blank. All of that will be presented and will be asked to be resolved. Amazing. Great, so these will be done in just a moment. And you will be able to see that, you'll be able to see those safety nets I was talking about. Perfect. So we uploaded 40 test sheets. All of those 40 test sheets were successfully processed by Akindi, but there's 5 issues, 5 exceptions, as we call them in Akindi, that we're asking for human verification. Great. So the first exception that we have is the student that they didn't bubble in their version. So Akindi doesn't know which answer key to grade this test against. This is actually easiest to handle when we're viewing the results later on. So I will be sure to come back to this in a moment. We then have some question exceptions. So this is that example that we were talking about. The student bubbled in 2 responses, but X'd out one of them. So in that case, I can use these checkboxes to make a change. So I can unselect C, like the student meant to X out C. And that green check mark means that we successfully saved that exception and updated the student's response accordingly, or like the student's grade as well. This student just did bubble in 2 responses. Like there isn't a way for me to tell just by looking at this whether or not they X'd one out or erased it. So in that case, I can just tell Akindi to ignore this exception in which the students would, like we would just save whatever that their mark should be. In this case, they would get 0 for this question. We then have 2 students that didn't bubble in their student ID. So these can be resolved by searching the class roster by student name or student ID and assigning this test sheet to the proper student. So I have Sadie Tanner. This time I have Sadie Tanner's student ID. They wrote it in, but not bubbled it in. So I can search the class roster and assign that test sheet to the student. I also have Eleanor Roosevelt, so I can search either by first name or last name to find the desired student and assign that test sheet to them. As soon as you see that green check mark, that means that we've successfully linked that student. This is particularly important when you're using like an LMS linked course. So we know where to send these grades when we're sending the grades back to the gradebook. Now that we've handled all of the exceptions, I can now click View Results. I see a question about uploading the roster. I see that. I'll come back to it at the end. Fantastic. So Akindi's results analysis are centered around two main questions. One, we want to help you understand how well the students performed. We also want you to understand how well the test itself performed. So the Overview tab features a high-level look at your assessment. So I can see the average, the highest and lowest mark. Akindi will highlight the 3 easiest questions on the assessment, as well as the 3 most difficult questions on the assessment. Under how well the test was designed, Akindi uses the discriminatory score or the point by serial to look at how well the questions are constructed. And I say that in air quotes because we don't actually have the question content. We're not analyzing the question content. We are just using a statistical analysis. So the point by serial measures the correlation between how well a student performed on the test as a whole and whether they answered this specific question correctly. So what I mean by that is when we look at question 3, for example, we can see that the highest performing students tended to answer this question correctly, while the lowest performing students answered this question incorrectly, meaning question 3 successfully distinguished between high performing and low performing students. When we compare that to a question that could be improved, we can see that the high performing students answered the questions correctly, but then there was also a number of high performing students that answered this question incorrectly. So there's little correlation. There is very little correlation between how well a student performed and whether they answered this question correctly. The Graphs tab features the full item analysis. The overview page just highlights like the top and the bottom. This allows you to see all of the questions. So we can see the students' marks listed highest to lowest. We have the grade distribution, and because I have different sections, I can see how one section compares to the other. And I can also see how one version compares to the other. The answer breakdown features the number of students that answered a question correctly versus incorrectly. And selecting any one of these bars, Akindi will provide you with the breakdown between the different responses. The one highlighted in green means that was the answer key. That was the correct answer. And then lastly, we have the point by serial for each question. Great. So the responses tab features a full spreadsheet view of all the students and how they performed on the assessment. So I can see each student, their percentage grade, their raw mark or score, as well as whether they answered each question correctly or incorrectly. Right now, I'm looking at all of the versions. If I were to select a specific version, Akindi will provide me with the exact response that the student selected. Anything keyed in red means that they answered that question incorrectly. We still have that one student that didn't bubble in their version, that one unresolved exception that we haven't gone back to. So I could actually, it's easiest to handle that from the responses tab. So by filtering the responses table by version, Akindi will pull the missing version to the top. By double clicking on any one of these versions, Akindi will automatically regrade that test sheet and provide me with that score. So if I select version A, I can see that Alan Turing would get 90% if they answered that, if they were graded against version A answer key, or they would get 20% if graded against version B. In that case, they likely wrote version A, so I can select version A and save that change. I see a question around whether Akindi will recognize if the students write their name but forget their IDs. So Akindi only actually reads the student ID bubbles. That's how we're able to associate the student properly to the class roster. But that being said, we will present an exception. So we will highlight if a student leaves their student ID field blank, we'll present that to you, and you'll have the ability to search the class roster for that student and assign that test sheet to them. The responses table is a very powerful page. It's like one of my favorite things in Akindi. There's like lots that can be done from here. One is that you can actually edit your answer key directly from this page. So the top row in the responses tab is the answer key for each question. By double clicking on any one of these answer key cells, Akindi will pull up an editor window that will allow you to make a change to the answer key. So for example, question 2 didn't perform well. The correct answer was B, but after reviewing it, I want to award full points for selecting either A or B. So in that case, I'll select both A and B and use our either or grading scheme from the drop-down menu. This will award a full point for A and a full point for B, or a full point for B. As soon as I click OK, then Akindi will automatically regrade those test sheets. I can see that the A's are now being marked as correct. The students' marks have been updated, and I can then save that change. From this responses tab, we also have the ability to curve the results. So Akindi has an adjust grades feature listed under this actions drop-down menu. So it's not a traditional curve in which like we don't force a bell curve. We just provide the same number of marks or like add the same number of marks or points to each student equally. So if I select this adjust grades feature, then Akindi will present me with the current lowest, average, highest, and average mark for my assessment, as well as a preview of what the adjusted lowest, highest, and average mark would be. I can then control how many marks I wish to add to the students and see a preview of what that would look like. And I have the ability to either allow students to exceed 100%, meaning that like the student would get 105%, or I could cap it at 100% in which once a student reaches 100, they can't go over that. Once I click save, then Akindi will add an additional column to my responses tab, the adjusted mark, in which I could then see what the adjusted mark would be. This would be the grade that we then send back to learning management system or include in all of the export results. Before we jump into exporting the results, the last two things I want to highlight on the responses tab is the scan column and the report column. So the scan column features the raw scan that we have on file for that student. So I can see the scan, the like raw scan that we have for that student. The report column will feature an individualized student report that features their percentage grade, their raw mark or score, as well as a corrected version of their test sheet. So this is commonly used during office hours, for example. So the student comes and wants to review their assessment with you instead of having to like find their test sheet amongst a stack of test sheets and like pull up the answer key and get all of that. This can just be pulled up and you can go through it with them. Now let's talk about exporting grades. So if your school has a learning management system integration, then you will have a big blue button that says send grades to your learning management system. I'm using Canvas right now, but so this is Canvas. But if you're using Blackboard or D2L, it would say send grades to D2L, for example. Once you click send grades to your learning management system, you have the ability to either create a new item from within Akindi, or we will also pull a list of all of the existing items in your gradebook. So I already have a midterm 1 set up in my Canvas gradebook, so I can select that. And I will then click export. Akindi will then send all of the grades back to the learning management system. And the grades would then be viewed or could be viewed by the students in their gradebook. We also have a number of other options, export options under this Actions drop-down menu. So we can download a question breakdown CSV file. This will provide, or the download CSV file will provide you with this responses tab in a CSV format. So essentially like a spreadsheet view of all the students and their scores. The question breakdown CSV file will feature all of the item analysis. So I can see the number of students that selected each response, the point by serial for each question, the point by serial for each response. That also features the KR20. I know that we have a number of nursing faculty online with us today. So the KR20 is something that I know nursing faculty like to look at as well. Email students their grades. This option will send each student a secure link to access their individual student report, which will look like this. And then the last export option is to download corrected test sheets. This will provide you with a PDF of each student's corrected test sheet that would look like this. Amazing. Can the students view their bubble sheet report? Yeah, so using the email students their grades feature, then the students will receive a secure link and they'll have access to their corrected test sheet in that link. I know that a number of people from our poll at the beginning, I know a number of people also use short answer to have some open-ended questions on their assessment. So there's a few ways to handle this. So at the moment, Akindi doesn't handle any of the like short answer marks. We just handle the multiple choice side of things. So what we would recommend doing, there's like two possible solutions for this. One is that you could export the results from Akindi using this download CSV file option. You can then add in their short answer marks into that Excel file and upload that Excel file to the learning management system. Alternatively, what typically most people do is that they will have two separate grade columns in the grade book, one the multiple choice grade and one the short answer grade. This will allow you to still use the send grades to learning management system button so that Akindi will send the Akindi grades to the multiple choice assessment column, and then you'll have a second column that will just be the short answer grades. And the students will know that their total score is the combination of those two, the sum of those two. So that is essentially the end-to-end workflow of how to use Akindi, from launching Akindi from your learning management system or setting it up manually, which we'll get into. It's creating an assessment, entering your answer key, printing bubble sheets, uploading bubble sheets, viewing the results, and then finally getting those results back to the students. There are a few final features that I want to highlight before I know that we want to talk about